Well guys, I'm kind of annoyed that last week I covered a TSM game, as this week has been such a phenomenal week for TSM, beating out the undefeated team, being the first team to do so this season against Cloud9, as well as beating their closest rivals in FlyQuest, who are also challenging for the top spots here in the LCS, in a fairly convincing way. But I promise you guys a Dignitas and Golden Guardians game where both teams have made recent changes to the lineups in the form of Acadian coming in instead of Grig, and for Golden Guardians, Huhi coming in for Keith. And this matchup looks and is set up to be quite an exciting one, considering the teams are on such an equal record after Dignitas' very hot start to the season and Golden Guardians' latter half of the split rise. So, who will win? Only one team can. Let's jump into today's picks and bans. So let's jump straight into Champion Select here, in probably one of the most interesting drafts I've seen in a while. And the interesting stuff starts here in the ban phase. We see Aquiana, Janna, and Rumble ban out of the Golden Guardians, and Dignitas in response ban Ornn, Aphelios, and Senna. Now, obviously, Quiana is a very good flex. She can be played in jungle, even if she was nerfed in a few patches ago in that jungle role. And obviously Janna was flexed top as a support pick by G2 on Saturday against Fnatic in their win. And obviously it is an extension onto the Sona and Soraka meta in that top side of the map, where you play an extra support who generates gold instead of by killing minions, but by just harassing the opposition. And it works really well into champions like Set or Aatrox, who are trying to look for CS, and you're just able to just harass them away with your W's, with your Q, and just provide yourself a little shield in case they start getting a bit too aggro. Obviously very nice pick. As for the Ornn, the Rumble, and the Aphelios, kind of standard bans we are seeing on this patch. Obviously Ornn is still super duper strong because it is still a tank meta. Rumble has so much burst damage with his Equalizer and his Flame Spitter. And then Aphelios is just that premier ADC that there isn't really much that can rival it. And as such, it is getting put on the ban for a lot of games. And yeah, that is a pretty interesting ban phase. And let's jump into the first pick phase where things remain a little bit crazy. So let's jump into the first round of picks, and we're starting with an assumed top laner here in the set for Golden Guardians. Obviously a very big brawler and very hard to deal with in that top side, so usually you would take a support into it, or in what Dignitas' case do, they take the Mordekaiser, obviously a very powerful champion, especially in a Cloud Rift. Obviously that speed boost inside the Death Realm is huge, and that's sort of what you rely on with the new Mordekaiser, is that sort of thing. Furthermore, they pick up the MF, which works very well in tandem with the Death Realm. Obviously if the Golden Guardians decide to pick up a Braum, you just Death Realm the Braum so he can't Unbreakable Will, and the MF will hit pretty much everything, and as such kind of gets a nice counter pick there by Dig. In response, Golden Guardians go for a champion that isn't really seen in the LCS or any real league recently, but has received quite a few buffs recently in the Kalista. A nice champion. Obviously you're hopping around the map quite a lot. You've got a nice sidestep built into your kit, probably the best mobility ADC in the game. Obviously you can launch in your support into the fights and be an absolute nuisance. Lastly, for Golden Guardians in this first phase, Aatrox gets picked up, and that kind of puts a question mark on that set, because you do not put set top lane if you've got an Aatrox. Like, Aatrox can granted jungle, but he isn't that good at jungling in comparison to other champions that are available. So it is a nice pick up there. It does allow a bit of freedom because that set could even go mid. Lastly for Dig, we do see them pick up the Thresh. Obviously to work well with the Mordekaiser, you pull him in, it grants a easy death realm or even just a landing of the bullet time on top of him, and also a bit more freedom in mobility for champions to get them out of sticky situations with that lantern. And looking at Dignitas team so far, probably a few of them will pick up a stopwatch to allow lantern saves a lot more easily. So it is a very nice champion pickup. So we arrive at the second ban phase. We see bans here towards Corki and Gragas on the Golden Guardian side, and Olaf and Elise on the Dig side. Obviously, we look at the 4 bans here. 3 of them are junglers. 2 of them are the big boy AP junglers in the Elise and the Gragas, who are very, very predominant. And then you have the Olaf ban, who is kind of the big AD jungler, obviously, that has that quick clear rate and is very, very potent. And the one big standout ban here is that Corki, who is something you don't really see banned, but when you see you're playing up against Froggen, who can play pretty much anything, it kind of is understandable why something like that gets banned in the sort of team comp that Dig are building, because you want a lot of poke from your mid pick here that can also do a lot of damage as well. But yep, very nice drafting here. Let's move to the actual last picks. So Golden Guardians were along the right sort of lines in terms of poke damage from the Dignitas side, and Dig decided to pick up here the Zoe, obviously a very, very good poke champion. You buy that squirt gun, obviously the frost shotgun, to help with your running away if you go forward in with your ultimate and your paddle star combo, and you use it very, very offensive or defensive. Very, very nice. And in response, kind of the common matchup that we've seen over the years of Zoe being in the game, it's the Syndra pickup, who, if you know how to work well, kind of has the same or similar interaction that Zilean does with Zoe. And if you wanted to see a perfect example of Zilean versus Zoe, check out Bjergsen on Zilean against C9 this week, as you position your orbs on where the Zoe has gone forward from, so that she essentially, when she goes back to that location, you get a pretty easy amount of burst damage and stun, or in clever cases, if you're lined up correctly, you put it on where she is going to, then you E as she's going backwards, so she is going to be stunned up. Anyway, enough about Zoe and Syndra interactions. The last pickup here for the Golden Guardians is going to be the Pantheon. Now this does technically add a spanner into the works for Dignitas, as being able to sort of pick here is quite hard, because Pantheon could technically go anywhere, and it's kind of hard for them to understand where it can go, because it could go topside, it could go support, it could go in the jungle, and in actuality it is picked for the jungle, so it's kind of a very good pick into this comp. Granted, it is a very heavy AD team Golden Guardians have built. As for the final pickup for Dig, it's going to be the Rek'Sai, early game jungler, high amount of AD damage, has an execute, not much more you can say. It's probably the best jungle that was available, bar say a Jarvan, but it's still a good team that's been drafted by Dig, and let's get into the game. So, this game was very interesting. Both teams are obviously tied in standings in a sense that they're both on 5 wins, and this game obviously would break that deadlock. And the interesting thing about this game was that there was no kill until the 26th minute in. And the thing about it was, there was a lot of objective control throughout the game, as teams were trading Drakes for the Rift Herald. In a sense, Dig took the early Drake, and GGU got the early Rift. And using the Rift, they were able to crack open turret plates, get a lot of gold that way. You get more gold, I do believe, out of a turret than you do with the first Drake. Obviously, the more Drakes you get, it does stack up. And from there, once you get the map pressure, if you push top, that frees up your bot side of the map, because the opposition are having to send more members up to the top side, while you can pile more bot lane with a bit more freedom, as you've obviously pushed up and pushed in your wave. It's harder for them to deal with it. So with you doing that, you obviously crack open your turrets, either lane. You obviously then have to play safe in your mid and in the jungle, and from it you're able to then pressure onto the next Drake, and then the Drake after that if you get the next Rift Herald, and you don't trade Rift for Dragon in this sense. And GGU did that. Golden Guardians used the Rift Herald very, very well, in a sense. They cracked open the bottom lane turret, which does obviously mean that there's going to be a lot of pressure being built up in that bot side map, because your minion waves can travel further without dying. They can obviously be killed quite quicker if GGU also get a bit more vision towards this bot side as well. That's another good thing, and it allows them to obviously set up, take another Drake, get their first Dragon, and when the Infernal Rift spawns, you kind of know that it's a priority now for Dragon Soul, because everyone wants that extra damage, because it's such a killless game that obviously it's going to be a lot harder the further the game goes on for someone to get a kill, if there's really not that much of a difference in the gold. And obviously the best way to get gold in the early game is by CSing as well as turret plating. And the irony is about all this objective play, Golden Guardians have probably one of the best Drakes and Baron and Rift Herald securing teams, with the Callista, with the Smite on Pantheon, who can just travel with his global ultimate to an objective quick, with an Aatrox who has a lot of burst damage, and a Set who's just built to tank, with a Syndra as well that can do a lot of damage in execution. It gives them such an easy job to burst down objectives. You have the Rend Smite combo. You're able to control objectives pretty easily, and that is something that we see here from Golden Guardians, as so far, if we look at where we are in the clips, they've taken 2 Drakes and 2 Rift Heralds, only giving up 1 Cloud Drake in the early game, which is fair enough. Like, you don't have the tank stats yet on the Set, or the Panth, or the Aatrox, so obviously you don't want to be playing around objectives when you're trying to secure your CS leads and your advantages in lane. And kind of from that, it allows them to actually just sneak away a Baron. Something that people don't realise is, if you have this sort of team comp, as soon as they get on it without a contest, and no contest is able to come out from your team, it's essentially dead. Like, you just have such a secure Baron team that it allows you to just be able to secure it, and from it, push up mid and win the game. There isn't much more is to be said here. And when the kills finally start pouring in, we see after the 26th minute, 6 kills come in literally 2 minutes. Make it 7 when Thresh dies, And from there, it's kind of obvious that Golden Guardians, with the team comp they've got and the Baron buff, that it's going to be an easy win for them at this point into the game. As Dig kept it close, but they didn't take anything. Like, the turrets in comparison, GGU took 5, Dig took 1, and even then, it's in the top side of the map. Yeah, that does help with Baron, but even still, you've still got a lot of standing turret gold against a team that's already outscaled you, gotten to the late game quicker than you, and is able to tank up, do a lot of damage, and be a nuisance that you're unable to respond. And essentially from that, Dig can have to curl over and give open the game to Golden Guardians because they just didn't have enough time or chances to set up any poke, to set up any sort of engage in the latter part of the game, that once GGU actually secured some turrets, there was no way they were letting the control slip out of their hands into Dig's sort of control, as they're unable to essentially get anything from the game. And as such, it was so easy for Golden Guardians to essentially win out once that Baron was secure, because there's no essential comeback from the Dignitas team. Now, I've watched this game quite a bit today. I watched it during my break today, and I've watched it since I've got home. And this game, while it doesn't seem to be played perfectly, obviously there was a lot of dive attempts by Dig towards mid. Obviously they're trying to catch out Golden Glue, who obviously has probably the lowest mobility champion on the Golden Guardian side, but obviously he knows how to play his lane well and survive, and it was kind of shown by how the team played. And I'm honestly amazed that Dig gave it up so easily. What they needed to have done was, at the spawning of the third Drake, or in terms of the actual spawning Drakes, pressure Golden Guardians far off of it as possible and set up, because their vision in this game was quite poor, honestly, and they kind of lost off of that. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. I've rambled on for quite a lot of time. If you enjoyed it, leave a like down below, subscribe when you're around here, or if you want to, and I will see you guys later. Peace out.